So the struggles are many for urban farmers. So some of the struggles that we want to talk about, let's say for example, with revitalizing abandoned lots. And I know there's probably a lot of people here who are thinking that this might be a decent option for you. When a place has been abandoned for about 30, 40 years, drug addicts used to be there, the house burnt down, and all of a sudden, you take this on and you revitalize that space. It takes a few years for the community to catch on that the same space where they used to buy their drugs is now the same space that is talking about health. So that's for all of you who might be thinking about revitalization work and taking on abandoned lots, that's a reality in itself. There's another reality for people of color with access to tangible resources for the work. It just feels to me some days like I need to be 100 times better than someone else to get a little bit of resources. And then the little bit of resources, I must spend hours and hours reporting on how I spent every single penny of those resources. And then the language that is used, it's blatantly different. It's almost like a different code, grant making. It's a different language from the language that we're speaking on the ground. It's a language that has to do with money and who gets it. That's a struggle. The access to land in the urban city is a huge struggle. In other words, why would you revitalize land for free and have it taken away from you the following year so that someone can put a large building on it? This is the reality of urban farming. The land does not belong to you, and you're not getting any long-term commitments around land use as we speak. How can you help? How can everyone help? Get involved in policy, because that's where the racism is. The racism is not coming at us every day in a blatant way as it has in the past. The racism is oppressing us in a different way through our laws, through our institutions. So this means, and this is why, as a food justice farmer on any given day, I still have to make my way to City Hall to back Karen, because I understand that we are all part of a large movement, and I can't be feeling so good on my farm. I have to think about everyone, and I have to think about the challenges that face us. So, ally yourself with the farmer. See how you can help. It doesn't mean that you have to run the project. Perhaps you're good with grant language, and you can play that role, and that could be how you support what happens. Perhaps you're good with art, and you can do visual things to address those issues. So those are some of the ways. And pay attention to what farmers are saying. There's a particular bias with people of color. And then when we come to the gender, because of all these isms, so the racism, sexism, all the isms that affect us, we have to liberate ourselves from them to be able to liberate other people. So that's some of the struggles that urban people face. It would be no access to land, racism, institutional racism that prevents us from having access to resources for our work. The other thing is, urban farms are not counted in the census currently. There's a farm census. And as you may or may not know, the same things and the importance of the individual census, why we need to show up and fill out those papers, that's the same reason urban farms need to be counted as farms, so the resources can trickle in. We're currently not counted. We are somehow telling ourselves that we're doing a great job growing food in the city. But I want to leave you with this idea of what happens if your ports of entry close. How long can the supermarkets feed that community? And in this time where bioterrorism and all of those things are real issues to us as a collective, we have to consider how we treat and how we build the farms that urban communities will need to turn to in event something larger happens. So something as simple as the snowstorm that we had shut off the bridges, the George Washington bridges, your ports of entry. We're talking about the trucks and the oil. When those ports of entries are closed, how do you feed yourself?
Bueno, yo a diferencia de estos dos farmers, yo soy de una familia de 3. Mis padres solo tuvieron 3 hijos, 2 mujeres, y 2 hombres y yo. Mis 2 hermanos son granjeros. Uno es Martín Rodríguez, que es de Mimomex, Pedro Rodríguez, que es La Baraja Farm. Y el reto más grande para mí es demostrarle a ellos que las mujeres somos tan fuertes y podemos hacer carrera también.
My parents had 3 children, 2 men and myself, and I have 2 brothers who have their own farms, and one of their names is Martín and the other one is Pedro, and my biggest challenge is to show them that women can do this too.
Ustedes como organizaciones, la mejor ayuda que nos pueden dar es educar a las comunidades, cómo dar clases de nutrición, como han estado haciendo, para que las personas aprendan a cocinar los vegetales en diferentes maneras.
So you as organizations or people that work with organizations, the way that you can help us is to continue educating the community, teach them about nutrition, teach them the different ways of cooking vegetables.
Y a las personas de bajos recursos probablemente ayudar de que se les aumente la cantidad de dinero en cheques, porque hace como 4 años atrás sigue siendo, para una familia de 1 y para una familia de 5, sigue siendo $24 en cheques de WIC.
And for low-income families, to increase the amount of money that they get from WIC, because as of 4 years ago, a family of 1 still gets $24. So it's the same amount that a family of 5 gets. So that needs to be increased.
Esa sería una buena forma de ayudarnos. Y a las personas que acuden a los mercados agrícolas, tal vez nosotros como granjeros dar un pequeño incentivo a esas personas, tal vez regalarles una papa o una cebolla o algo pequeño de vez en cuando para darles las gracias que han venido a nuestro market o a nuestro CSA.
Entonces, sorry. A good way that we can give people incentives, the folks that come and visit us at farmers markets, maybe we can give them a couple of free things, maybe some potatoes or some onions. Oh, it's for the members of the CSA. This is a way to show them our gratitude for being members of our CSA or coming to the farmers markets where we come.
Our struggles, I guess our struggles are the weeds, the weather, the insects, the government. And that's not really funny. The government is probably the biggest problem. When I was first starting, I went to get a loan, and they told me that you don't have any tractors, so we can't help you. I said, well, I need the money to get a tractor. Well, if we give you the money to get a tractor, how do we know you're going to do anything? Well, I said, I don't know. So yes, I didn't get the loan, but somehow I managed to get an old used tractor, and then bought another one, then another one. And it seems as the larger you get, the more bureaucracy you encounter. So I think one of my biggest struggles is the government. It's just all the policies. It's almost as though you have to hire someone full-time to handle your accounting and dealing with the government, all the government issues and all the government programs. So I would say one of my biggest struggles would probably be dealing with the bureaucracy.
Okay. From your perspective, what has changed in the food movement in the last 5 years?
First of all, there's, I don't know how many hundreds of people in this room who are interested in farming, and that obviously is a very positive sign that people are interested in local food. And I think all the new businesses that I'm seeing where people are doing added value products, urban farming, I think is something that we are seeing more and more of. More people working in urban farms, and more people looking for apprenticeships and looking to become farmers. I think we definitely have more young farmers. We have an apprentice program on our farm, and we've had about 60% of the apprentices go on to farm on their own. So we're proud that we have farmers all over the Northeast who we still mentor and keep in touch with, and I think that is a real positive change, and it's something that we're real happy to be a part of, and it grows our community of friends and farmers that we have good ties with, and we're able to get together and visit their farms and just hear stories about how they're dealing with different weather conditions and problems and so forth. So I think the network of farming is growing, and that's really exciting.
So the food movement over the last 5 years, what are some of the changes? Some of the changes, and these changes have not happened by themselves. They've happened because of diligence, due diligence, people of color working on the ground. Is to move the food movement from a white elitist movement into a movement that is representative of the people. So it's a movement that involves us, that doesn't sterilize our stories, that involves our struggle, or land loss stories, or migration stories, or immigration stories, or women's stories, or cultural stories. That's what's going on right now. And I am so happy to be a part of the effort that is being made on the ground to make sure that the people of color are included in this conversation. And so a part of that means education. So this farmer teaches at farm school. I teach food justice at farm school. So I teach it at farm school. And I teach it there. And those are all my students clapping. I didn't pay them. But I teach it there, and it doesn't matter who's around the table learning. We establish commonality based on our humanity. So what we are doing is deconstructing the myth of race at the moment. What we are doing is teaching our children now, and I have 20 youths, teenage youths, that are actively involved in learning food justice and how the system has oppressed them. And then we move a step further to liberating through education and nutrition. When I colonize your food, I colonize you. How many people know that there's such a word as food colonization? When we look at the Native Americans and their rates of diabetes, since we exposed them to the modern American diet, which in all my healing training, we knew it as the MAD diet, because it's mad. It sends you to processed foods. It asks you to use nutrition in a way that does not serve you, that further alienates you from the thing that sustains you. So I would say the food movement is changing as we speak, but it is not changing on its own. It is changing because of organizations like Just Food. Can I get a round of applause? It is changing because people are ready to speak the truth to each other, because people are willing to say, we are not going to be blinded by our privilege. That's what's changing. So this message is for the people of color that have been excluded from that movement. Now is your chance to tell your story. Don't let this pass you by. Do it not just for you, but for the sake of the generations that are not yet here. This is how we will change the food movement as it existed 10 years ago.
Bueno, los cambios que yo he visto en estos últimos pasados años es la aceptación del LGBT en el CSA y en los mercados agrícolas.
The change that I've seen in the last 5 years is that the CSA and farmers markets are now accepting EBT.
Y otro de los cambios que he visto que todas las comunidades de todas las razas están comiendo más vegetales, parte gracias a Just Food que trae los CSAs. El propósito es que vamos a variar los vegetales, es el granjero que decide, no es el customer.
Something else that I've noticed that has changed a lot is that more communities, regardless of race, are eating many more vegetables. And the reason for this is because of the work that Just Food has been doing. And we've also noticed that the farmers are deciding about the vegetables that will be brought to the consumer.
Entonces tratamos de traerles, si tenemos 50 variedades, tratemos de combinar las 50 variedades y las personas, los líderes mandan recetas a los miembros.
And if we have a variety of 50 different things, we really try and include all that in the shares. And we've also noticed that some of the folks who are in leadership of the CSA groups are sharing recipes as well.
Entonces las personas tienen la oportunidad de probar diferentes vegetales que no conocían. Eso es lo que he observado el cambio de este último tiempo.
So folks have the opportunity to try different vegetables and try different things, and this is something that I've noticed that has changed.
Y muchas gracias a Just Food. Y quisiera que brindemos un aplauso a ellos por este trabajo que han hecho tan bueno.
And thank you.
biggest change that I've seen is the biggest change that I've seen, though, it's true, is that people becoming more educated and trying different kinds of food. I know we grow Jerusalem artichokes. If anyone knows what Jerusalem artichokes are, it's a tuber, it's a root crop. And we've delivered them to the soup kitchen, and Just Food shows people how to use them. Now, some people like them and some people don't, and people are talking about diabetes, and eating Jerusalem artichokes, as I've heard, helps regulate your sugar. Instead of eating potatoes, you would eat Jerusalem artichokes, so you wouldn't have a spike in your sugar. But small things like this are becoming, it's just exploding with the work that Just Food has done with their chefs and what they've done, and forcing us, literally forcing us, not literally, but they're forcing us monetarily to grow different things and bring different things to the soup kitchens. And doing that also, we bring it to the green market. I go to a market in Brooklyn. There's a market in Brooklyn. It's a very, very diverse neighborhood in Cortelyou. And when I take these different things and people see them on the table, they ask what they are, how to use them. So I have different recipes and I show people. And people are becoming so much more educated and they want different foods, and they're forcing us. It's kind of a demand pull kind of thing where they're forcing us to grow new and diverse crops. And I love it. I think it's the greatest thing that could happen.
Seeing as how we have about 2 minutes left, you can't really ask such a deep question, but I would like to ask all of you this one question. Keep it nice and light. We only have 2 minutes. But what's your favorite vegetable to grow, and why is it?
I actually like spinach and Swiss chard. They're my favorite to eat, and I really like Swiss chard. There are a couple of insects that bother it, a couple of diseases, but overall it's one of the easier crops that I grow, and I really could eat it every night, so that's what I would do.
My favorite plants to work with are the herbs, so we'll get that out of the way. But if I had to choose a vegetable, perhaps the bitter melon.
Bueno, yo todos los vegetales y las hierbas y las flores son mis favoritas, pero si me están forzando a escoger una, tendría que escoger el kale. Me encanta cocinarlo diferentes y porque es muy bueno en hierro. Calcio, perdón.
¿En qué?
El calcio.
Okay. So she loves all vegetables. I'm really surprised at how many people speak Spanish. It's all like great class I'm here. So, of all those vegetables, since she's being forced to pick one, she loves kale. She loves it because she likes growing it and the calcium that it provides.
I say the favorite vegetable, the vegetable I like to grow the most, probably is garlic. It has most of the season. Can I make one quick comment? One quick comment. There's one vegetable that I grow that I used to hate when I was a kid. I remember pulling purslane from the onions. And purslane is a weed that kind of grows like a carpet. It's bertolaga. Some people call it bertolaga, and I forget their other names for it. And back then, I remember when I was a kid pulling it from the onions and throwing it down, and the rain would come, and in a week or so, it would start growing again. And we just hated this weed. And now this purslane is eating all over. So I think that's the greatest thing. So purslane has to be one of my favorites now.
I want to thank you all for coming, for listening to us, but also to our farmers. Throughout the art growing season. So thank you everyone. Our expo is ready. It starts at 4 at 6 o'clock on the second floor.